I want to welcome our audience to this L.E.A.R.N podcast. It is in these podcasts that L.E.A.R.N wants you to meet experts that can help you in your work as school leaders or perhaps partners in the education landscape. The topic for this podcast is learning environments with a special focus on hearing, and our guest is Kevin Mitchell, Vice President of Audio Enhancement. On the L.E.A.R.N website, you will find on the research page under the COE Sustainability and the element of learning environments, research in this area being discussed, along with potential resources to access. Kevin, I want to welcome you to the L.E.A.R.N podcast. It's good to have you here to speak with us about this important topic. Now, I know that you have an extensive research and work background in the area of learning environments with a special focus on the significance of hearing in the learning environment. Would you please share with the audience some of that background and experience?
Sure. Thanks, David. And I appreciate you guys having me. And I'm really a huge advocate for what L.E.A.R.N is doing in the educational space. I joined the company about 15 years ago, and since then I've gotten a deep understanding for how impactful learning is in the learning environment. 80% of all education is actually auditory. Not a lot of people realize that. Doesn't matter if you're a visual learner, hands-on learner, 80% of what you're going to retain is through auditory reception. And what's been cool to us is the company was started 45 years ago by a mom with two deaf children who quickly found out the importance of hearing and what it meant for development and speech to a student's learning. So we've been able to take that effort by a mother's love and her ability to want a child to succeed, and been able to implement that and replicate that in over a third of all the classrooms in the U.S.
Wow, that's pretty impactful and a powerful story as well, Kevin. And you know, I know that you just cited a little bit of research, and I know there's extensive research out there about this work. Would you kind of cover some of that research, and especially the key piece of information you think our audience would really want to know?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing to hear, because a lot of people, when they hear about our company, especially the foundation of it and the story behind audio enhancement, assume that hearing is only important for children with difficulties in hearing. And I think people oversee or have an oversight of the impact it has on the everyday student. One of the studies that we've been so grateful to be a part of was the fact that a third of all students in the classroom on any given day have some sort of hearing impairment. And the problem is that third is unrecognizable, because it could be a child with a common cold or the flu or a sinus infection for that given day. So that the third of the population rotates throughout the building. But for us, it's not just about the ability to hear the teacher, it's the clarity that's involved when a teacher is able to talk at their normal tone of voice, right? So not just necessarily shouting or projecting their voice or using their teacher voice, but the idea that when you take a normal speech pattern and you distribute it evenly through every student in the classroom, the impact that has on learning, the impact that has on teacher vocal strain, the impact that has on word recognition for students, especially with ELL students, being able to understand the consonants like sh and ch, right? That CH and SH sound is very hard to distinguish when you're projecting it very loud. And our company's goal is to provide an equitable hearing and learning opportunity for every student in the classroom.
Wow. And so you've designed systems to help with that enhancement, right? And how long have you guys been working on those systems as a company?
Yeah, so 45 years ago, Claudia literally went to Radio Shack and created the first classroom audio enhancement system. And since then, we've used industry knowledge and customer feedback to improve the product and make it what it is today. And like I said, David, we're in over a third of every single classroom in the U.S. at this point.
Wow, that is really amazing. Now, with that amount of experience, obviously, if a district wanted to engage in this work, you'd be able to tell them those predictable positive outcomes that they'd want to communicate to their internal and external communities. Could you convey a few of those right now, that if a district's going to do this, you could tell them right out of the gate where the positive outcomes are going to be really quickly?
Yeah, I think I'll give you the most simplified answers to that ever. But teachers are going to report back to you that they have more energy at the end of the day, right? Their voice doesn't hurt. They're not constantly on stage. They're able to talk their normal tone of voice, and their system and audio is able to evenly distribute their voice out to the students. And I think that's one of the biggest, quickest feedbacks you're going to get. But if you went and talked to students, who I personally think is the most important piece of the puzzle, they're going to say one simple fact. They're going to say, I can hear my teacher better, right? And a lot of people undermine what that actually means. But the truth is kids are coming to school to learn. If they're saying that the biggest investment in the classroom, the teacher, they can hear that person better and understand what they're being, what's being said better. They're obviously going to improve academically over time of that.
It's interesting, Kevin, you're talking about that. And I'm reflecting on my 13 years as a teacher, and I'll never forget my first couple years. I ran into this every year, and it was a student who couldn't see. And you could pick up on it right away. And just getting them glasses made all the difference in their behavior and their learning out of the gate. It hadn't occurred to me till listening to you just now, with the exception of obviously the hearing impaired, that the same kind of impact can take place for students in the general population who just have a difficult time hearing. That had not occurred to me, honestly.
Yeah, and honestly, it's further than that. It could just be the location you've been sat at in the room, right? You are going to be at a disadvantage. I got told an amazing story by a close friend of mine, Dr. Curtis Jones, who was superintendent of the year for AASA, and that really believed in this work. He said when he was a child, his mother sent him to school. Obviously, he got put in the classroom. The teacher sat him right underneath the HVAC unit in the room. And he said when he sat under that HVAC unit, he really struggled to hear the teacher. And he went home and told his mother that he wasn't able to participate in class and learn because he was sitting under this HVAC unit. And his mother obviously went and talked to the principal. Principal talked to the teacher. And the next day, they moved Dr. Jones to the front of the classroom. Well, the kid that was in the front, they took him and moved him to Dr. Jones' seat. And Dr. Jones went home that night and he said, Mom, I just couldn't believe what I just did to Timmy, right? Timmy's a good friend of mine. And by me complaining, I actually hurt the other students. So sometimes it's more than just the hearing impairment. It's just the ability to hear that teacher at a normal tone of voice. One of the strongest research studies that has ever been done on audio is the idea that when you're projecting your voice, you can project the sound of a consonant. But if you project your voice, you cannot, the sound of a vowel. But if you project your voice, you cannot project the sound of a consonant. So if you did the CH or SH or the sound of the letter T, which is T, right, there is no way to project that. And the problem is the more you emphasize your vowels, the less intelligible you make your speech because it's harder to understand the consonants. So that's why English language learners struggle so much with three and tree, because when you're projecting that sound, it's very hard to pick up on that. And that's one of the biggest impacts we've seen.
Interesting. Now, like anything else, obviously these are very positive impacts, but like anything else, there are always going to be those kind of implementation barriers. And if districts were looking to do this kind of work, what would be the thing you'd kind of tell them out front that this will be a barrier you want to be prepared to overcome? What would that be?
Yeah, I think just the simple physical installation. We've been in lots of schools that have asbestos in the ceiling. We've been in schools that don't have drop tile ceilings and they need wall speakers. So it's always best to do a site assessment and understand your needs of the district before embarking on the journey. But overall, like I said, we've spent many years trying to make it so flexible that it could be installed in any K-12 classroom in the U.S. If you start to get to a point where you're looking at auditoriums or gyms, this might not be the best sound system. But for your standard K-12 classroom, we've made a pretty cookie cutter solution that could check the box for all of those.
Nice. Now, could you share with our audience, you've shared a couple stories, but is there any story specifically in your experience at Audio Enhancement where this work has had a significant impact on students or a school specifically?
Yeah, I've literally had a ELL student cry to me that she was never able to understand or hear the teacher until they put the audio system in. We've had a teacher, this will be a funny one you guys will relate to, but I went into a teacher's classroom my third week on the job, and part of training for this, this industry back then was you go do the install, right? You physically install it, you physically uninstall it. Well, we had put in a pilot classroom for a teacher to test. And at the end of the year, the principal wasn't getting back to us and didn't let us know if they wanted it or not. So we went to the school to uninstall the pilot and take it back. And when we walked in the room, the teacher asked what we were doing, and we told them what we were doing. And they said, please don't do anything. And we said, I'm sitting here third week of the job. They said, go get this system and don't come back without it. Well, she said, don't touch the system. And then soon after, there was a linebacker-sized gentleman coming in the room and told me to get off the ladder, and it turned out to be her husband. And her husband came to me and said, how much does the system cost? So I had to, again, third week on the job, didn't know the answer, had to call, find out. And when I told him the price, he took out a checkbook and literally wrote the check for the system. And I said, well, that's so gracious that you would do that for kids. And he said, I'm not doing it for kids. I'm doing it because my wife talks to me at night. She comes home and has more energy, and she now is willing to, conversate and go through the motions. And that's been, anyways, that one's always stuck with me because it mattered so much to that professional in the classroom. And I've had a couple superintendents tell me that the biggest compliment they can give to their teachers is telling them that they're a professional and that your voice matters. Mm-hmm. So when they've gone to a new district that didn't have audio enhancement and put in the audio enhancement system, they basically sent the message to all the teachers that your voice matters to these kids and what you say matters. And that's another story that's really stuck with me over the years.
It's a powerful one. Now, if there was a district that you would like to highlight as doing remarkable work in this area, what would that be, especially for our audience who might want to go investigate?
It really varies. I mean, if you go state to state, everyone has a different practice. Orange County, Florida has done this now for 25 years. They've refreshed 3 different times the audio system, all with our audio enhancement product. And it's not because we're good salespeople. It's because it made such a big difference. And when they've ever talked about not refreshing, teachers have revolted. So they're doing great work. Bibb County, Georgia, Dr. Curtis Jones, who I just mentioned, he's now retired, but he's doing amazing work with the audio systems and cameras and intercoms in his schools. We've really evolved over the years, and we're providing a much broader suite of solutions that includes the bells paging intercom and cameras in the classroom. And I'll tell you, that's something I see as being the future of education, is the idea that you can record high quality lessons and share those with students and staff to improve your practice and to provide an extra bit of content to students that might be struggling or just need the reiteration. So we have a lot of districts across the U.S. starting to embark on that trail, and that's been impressive. And then I can't not mention one of my good friends, but in D214 in Illinois, Dr. David Schuler, he's been instrumental in providing us feedback to improve our product and improve our company. But what they're doing up there in northern Chicago has been really, really astonishing.
Wonderful. Now, if a district or a partner were interested in exploring more deeply into this work, how would they go about contacting you and arranging for those conversations?
So this might be interesting, but I give everybody my cell phone number. I'm sure my wife doesn't love that, but my cell phone is 561-306-3327. People can feel free to call or text anytime. And then my email address is kevin.mitchell@audioenhancement.com.
Okay, well, wonderful. Well, thank you, Kevin, for being a part of this important work of supporting our students in schools. And thank you for your participation in the L.E.A.R.N. podcast.
Pleasure. We're excited.